I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. A bombshell report from the Weekly Standard claiming the White House has been ignoring direct proof of Iran's link to al-Qaeda and explaining why it is so concerned about Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech on Tuesday before Congress.
The link between Iran and al-Qaeda, discovered in a treasure trove of bin Laden documents that the administration has been sitting on for years, all as the White House seeks a nuclear deal with Iran. Steve Hayes is senior writer for the Weekly Standard. He wrote this very exhaustive and fascinating piece. Steve, good to have you here this morning.
Thanks, Martha.
All right, so I've got a number of questions for you based on this. First of all, the president has made it very clear that he does not want Netanyahu to speak here, and they have said it's because of protocol issues and elections. You say not so. Why?
Well, look, I think if you look at the 6 years of history of the Obama administration in Iran, it's been very clear, really from the outset, that they wanted this rapprochement with Iran, that they wanted to sort of extend a hand, that they were seeking some kind of a deal, that they wanted to extend warm relations to Iran, and nothing was going to get in their way. And I think we've seen over the course of the administration, whether it's in some cases the administration's own designations of al-Qaeda figures who were working in Iran, whether it's the administration's own designations of Iranian ministries that were aiding and abetting al-Qaeda figures working in Iran, that the president just hasn't wanted to talk about that much. You had the bureaucrats sort of doing the bureaucratic spade work, but the rest of the administration unwilling to talk about it.
All right, so we talked about the fact that there were 10,000 documents that were uncovered during the bin Laden raid, and that was considered a big feather in the cap of the administration. It was going to be this great treasure trove of intelligence. But you report that only 10% of those documents were ever investigated, and then somebody there was told to stop digging. Really?
Yes, absolutely. And actually the number is more than 1 million documents, depending on how you count them. More than 1 million documents that were recovered in this raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Basically, there was an initial scrub that the CIA conducted that lasted several weeks, and by all accounts, it was very productive. James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, said that initial scrub produced 400 intelligence reports, which led to U.S. action around the globe targeting al-Qaeda. So that initial scrub was great, but then it all stopped. The CIA basically sat on the documents. They retained what's called executive authority. Well, I think it's because they didn't want to know what was in them. The Obama administration didn't want to know what was in them. And you know, these documents have tremendous implications, not only for our policy with respect to Iran, but for potentially our policy as it relates to our own allies. What were the Brits doing in Afghanistan? What about Pakistani intelligence? How much of an overlap was there between Pakistani intelligence and senior al-Qaeda leadership? It requires, once you expose these documents in al-Qaeda's own hand, it requires the administration to act on them. And the president's argument all along has been that the war on terror is ending.
Is over. All right. You know, in terms of Iran, the president has had what some would characterize as a cozy relationship with the supreme leader of Iran. Now, if they have a cozy relationship with al-Qaeda, that is something that he is not going to want to discuss, because al-Qaeda is our clear enemy, and he wants to make a deal with Iran, and he seems to think that he's, you know, seeing into the soul of this supreme leader to some extent, no?
Right. I mean, the president has made clear from the very beginning of his administration that he wanted to, quote, decouple the nuclear talks with Iran on the one hand from all other regime activity. So that's why he sort of turned a blind eye toward the repression in Iran in the June 2009 elections after the mullahs fixed the elections. It's one of the reasons we haven't heard any real discussion of Iran and terrorism in any kind of a consistent way from the administration, in spite of the fact, I think it's really important to point out, the Treasury Department, when it's doing these designations, is making a clear and consistent and unequivocal case that there exists a secret relationship between Iran on the one hand and al-Qaeda. So you have bureaucrats in the Obama administration being very clear about that relationship and what it portends for the West.
Yeah, and no doubt Benjamin Netanyahu will want to spill all of this when he speaks in front of Congress, and that's quite uncomfortable for the administration at this point. We've got to leave it there, but Steve, I encourage everybody to read your piece in the Weekly Standard this week if they really want to